Warning. Third warning, 49.
I'm gonna go.
This is a death march with no rest and no end. 50 contestants must maintain a speed of 3 miles per hour. If they can't keep walking or their speed is too low, they will be executed on the spot by soldiers with a shot to the head. But there's an even more outrageous rule. All physical needs must be met while walking, including eating, drinking, sleeping, and even going to the bathroom. If they stop for more than 10 seconds during this period, they will also be eliminated on the spot.
Oh my God.
The race will not end until only the last person remains on the road. Many years later, the United States is no longer the superpower it once was. Years of civil war have mired the entire country, with the economy stagnant and society in chaos. In such a chaotic situation, the American people have almost no hope. Indiana ordered to boost national morale. The U.S. authorities came up with a bizarre idea to hold an annual race walk with a full live broadcast every year. The rules of the race sound very simple. Every year, 3 to 5 young people of the right age are selected from each state, eventually forming a 50-person team of contestants. These contestants will win, as long as they can finish the entire race without being eliminated. Moreover, the rewards for the racewalk are very attractive. The winner will not only receive a huge bonus, but also have the authorities grant one wish. As a result, the racewalk became a huge hit overnight, with countless young people rushing to sign up. But when the selected contestants arrived at the scene, they realized that this race was a death game. Once it starts, you can't stop. Anyone who gives up halfway or is eliminated will be shot in the head on the spot. It's clearly a gamble with one's life, yet countless people still want to participate. After all, for people at the bottom, this may be the only chance to change their fate. Now, the Great Death March has been held for many sessions, and has become an indispensable annual event in the United States. This year, in the town of Rocks, Texas, a young man named Raymond received an invitation to the race. According to the rules, those who receive the invitation can apply to withdraw 3 days before the race starts. But Raymond secretly hid the letter, and only took it out after the withdrawal period had passed. His mother, Jelly, was extremely anxious when she found out. As someone who knew better, she was well aware of how dangerous this race was. It was highly unlikely that her son would come back alive, but Raymond was determined to participate, because he had a reason he couldn't refuse to go. Ellie couldn't persuade her son, so she had to drive him to the race's starting ceremony. On the way, Ellie still didn't give up. She wanted to take her son to find someone to help, maybe to get him to withdraw from the race. Unexpectedly, Raymond refused, and if a contestant fails to arrive at the race site on time, and doesn't submit a withdrawal application before the deadline, they will also be considered eliminated. There was no other way, so Ellie had to take her son to the race site. Then the mother and son said a heartfelt goodbye. Raymond's departure might be forever. Ellie's hands trembled as she held her son, and tears welled up in her eyes.
Mom, it's just a few days. I'll see you in a few days. Okay, bye. I love you, Mom.
Later, while waiting in line for inspection, Raymond met a black contestant named Peter. They quickly became familiar with each other after just a few words. Raymond learned that Peter was from the neighboring state. Soon, other contestants arrived one after another. Everyone gathered to chat. A warm-hearted young man even shared the cookies he brought with everyone. As they talked, Raymond realized that all the contestants were similar to himself. They were all ordinary people living at the bottom of society. Although everyone seemed to be talking and laughing on the surface, they were all secretly sizing up the others and figuring out how to win in the end. Just then, a jeep drove over from a distance, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Raymond turned his head and saw that standing on the jeep was Major Mike, the host of the Great Race Walk. This man was specifically in charge of monitoring their group of contestants. When all the contestants had arrived, the soldiers began distributing equipment. Each person received a numbered plate and a smartwatch. The plate served as the contestant's identification card. The smartwatch could both measure speed and record distance. After distributing the items, Mike began to read out the race rules. Everyone needed to keep walking along the highway, with no finish line and no rest. The organizers would provide food and water. Eating, drinking, and other bodily functions all had to be done while walking. During the race, contestants' walking speed couldn't be lower than 3 miles per hour. which is equivalent to 4.8 kilometers per hour. If they slowed down, the referees would issue a yellow card warning. Contestants had to speed up within 10 seconds. If they still failed to meet the standard after the time limit, another yellow card would be given. Once a contestant accumulated 3 yellow cards, they would be eliminated on the spot. However, as long as a contestant maintained the required speed for 1 consecutive hour, they could cancel out 1 yellow card. Contestants couldn't leave the road throughout the race. Any deviation would result in immediate elimination. The race would only end when only 1 person remained out of the 50.
When this is broadcast for all the states, your inspiration will continue to elevate our gross national product. We will be #1 in the world again! Who's ready to and win?
And so the death march officially began. Everyone started lifting their feet and moving forward. Soldiers with guns followed closely beside them in vehicles. At first, everyone was full of energy, figuring out a suitable pace, and walking felt relatively easy. Soon, Raymond took the lead to break the silence, and struck up a conversation with Peter. With Raymond starting things off, everyone quickly joined in the chat.
Spectators until the final stretch. Except for the f***ing locals.
Chatting for a while helped everyone relax a little. Contestant Jimmy even joked, "Stay alert, hundreds of millions of people are watching us." Raymond looked for the camera in the direction Jimmy pointed, only to find the lens was actually hidden on a cannon barrel. He immediately realized this was no ordinary camera angle. It was set up to film the moment eliminated contestants were shot. Glancing back at the armed soldiers behind them, everyone wisely fell silent. When the race reached the 5-mile mark, no one had been given a yellow card yet. After all, the contestants had basically trained before the race, and knew how to conserve their energy. Just as everyone was guessing who would be the first to be penalized, a sharp alarm suddenly rang out. Contestant 38, Jerry, received his first yellow card warning. But Raymond remembered this guy. They had even talked. Before the race, he looked quite strong physically, not like someone who would be penalized first. At this point, Peter leaned over to explain to Raymond, Jerry was taking a warning while he still had energy, so he could figure out the limit of the speed requirement. But right at this moment, a guy got a stone in his shoe. Instead of taking off his shoe while walking, he insisted on stopping to deal with it. The others turned around nervously to look at him.
That dumb actually gonna get a f***ing ticket.
Get up, man, stop playing.
Warning. Number 5. Third warning.
But then a young man, named Vicky, stepped forward and snapped at Jimmy, who had just called him an idiot. He wasn't stupid, he did it on purpose. It turned out the young man wanted to trade 3 warnings for 30 seconds of rest, but Jimmy retorted. The race had just started, yet his price would be having to walk continuously for the next 3 hours, without receiving any more warnings. The young man, furious, said, "We'll see who gets a penalty first." The race soon reached the 7-mile mark. By now, the formation had started to break apart, and everyone split into several groups. Raymond and Peter kept up their speed, steadily walking at the very front of the group. But as they walked, Raymond suddenly spoke up. This race was meaningless, and the prize was certainly not important. Now, America's system had pushed people to the brink. The government pointed to the Great Race Walk as the only escape route and said, "This is your only way out." Of course, people were desperate to participate. After all, everyone had been taught since childhood that the Great Race Walk was the only and honorable choice. Clearly, there were only 50 spots each year, yet nearly every boy in the country signed up.
Even though it's not required. Because we're all so fucking desperate. What does that tell you?
What?
Nobody signs up for this. Not really.
But at this moment, Peter and the others couldn't yet understand what Raymond meant. They only knew that casually objecting to the Great Race Walk would get them arrested. As they were chatting lively, Ari, contestant 49 from the back of the line, came over. It turned out Ari didn't sign up for the race for money. He just wanted to write a book about his personal experience and have it published. The others just shook their heads as they listened. If you win, you get a huge bonus. If you lose your life. What book would you even write then? The next second, a shrill alarm suddenly blared. A young man named Corey had a leg cramp. As soon as his speed dropped to the threshold, he received 2 yellow cards. Raymond hurried over to help, supporting the young man to adjust his breathing and pace. But as soon as Raymond let go, the young man, as if his bones had been pulled out, collapsed onto the scalding road surface.
One of our comrades has fallen. Let's remember him fondly and celebrate his bravery. Today, we walk for Carly. Let's hear it, boys!
After the first person was killed, everyone finally began to realize the true cruelty of this race. Fortunately, no one else suffered misfortune for a while on the next stretch of the road. When they reached the 17-mile mark, the atmosphere had just relaxed a little, when Peter saw a girl by the roadside holding a sign to cheer him on. Peter even made faces to make everyone laugh, but before the laughter faded, the young man wearing number 1, who was walking at the very front, suddenly turned purple, foamed at the mouth, and collapsed to the ground. Mike didn't even blink. He raised his hand and fired a shot. This time, the atmosphere froze again. Later, the group passed through an open plain and arrived at a dam. The beautiful scenery temporarily dispelled the shadow of death. Meanwhile, Vicky had walked continuously for 3 hours, canceling out the 3 yellow cards he had accumulated, but before everyone could catch their breath, a conflict broke out at the front of the group. Vicky deliberately went to taunt another young man, and the two argued more and more fiercely, even yelling insults at each other. The young man slipped, fell to the ground, and couldn't get up. He became a corpse in the end. Raymond and a few others scolded Vicky, while Vicky, overcome with regret, slapped himself a few times. He really didn't mean to do harm. He just wanted to tease the other person a little, never knowing the consequences would be so severe. Later, when the race reached the 35-mile mark, one contestant suddenly got diarrhea. He couldn't hold it in and wanted to go to the bathroom, but the race only allowed 10 seconds for adjustment. He had to take care of his physical needs while continuing to walk forward. The entire group was instantly filled with a pungent stench. He thought it would be fine after he finished, but unexpectedly, the man was in so much pain that he couldn't straighten his waist. Even walking became an impossible hope. After 3 yellow card warnings, a gunshot rang out, and the man was eliminated.
Your first night is almost upon you. For some of you, it will be the last. But remember, with determination, pride, and ambition, you will see the dawn.
Everyone knew well that this long night was like a scythe wielded by death to claim lives. In the early hours of the morning, drowsiness surged like a tide. Raymond and Peter gritted their teeth and stayed at the front, chatting about everything from constellations to daily family matters, even digging up gossip they'd heard through the grapevine. But even with their lively conversation, their feet couldn't stop trembling, and their eyelids began to feel heavy.
Otter, you were gonna die on this hill. Maybe more than half. That happened 6 years ago. 28 total! Woo! There we go.
Soon after, gunshots rang out one after another, and contestants fell one by one. This was going to be an extremely brutal night. Raymond clung to a final burst of resolve in his heart. Even though his legs felt as if filled with cement, and his eyelids were so heavy that he could only keep them open with sheer willpower, he dared not stop. But even so, Raymond's mind began to grow fuzzy. Just as he was about to faint, Peter reached his side in time, and told Raymond to pour cold water over his head. Raymond shuddered, and his consciousness cleared a little. With Peter's help, Raymond managed to hold on. No one knew how long they had walked, before the sky finally turned pale with the first light of dawn. By this time, they had already walked 59 miles, but the original team of 50 had been whittled down to fewer than 20 survivors. They left the wilderness and reached the edge of a city. At this moment, Peter took the initiative to ask Raymond if he thought he had a chance of winning. Raymond shook his head, and Peter thought the same. He himself had no chance of winning. When he signed up, he'd held a glimmer of hope, thinking that in a society governed by law, killing couldn't happen so casually. He'd assumed the guns in the soldiers' hands were fake, and the killing scenes were all made with special effects. But only after participating in person did he understand the cruel truth of the race. If you don't keep walking, you die, and to become the final survivor, physical strength alone was far from enough. The most important thing was mental fortitude. What they were competing for was willpower, but Peter knew he lacked that ability. He didn't have the obsession to win at all costs.
I'm tired enough. I think I'll just sit down.
There are 18 people left alive now. The competition ahead will only get more and more intense. Before long, the race reached the 67-mile mark, and everyone's strength had been greatly depleted. Even the talkative Peter had lost his energy, and everyone dragged their heavy steps, moving like walking corpses. Suddenly, a shrill alarm sounded. It turned out Ari had sprained his ankle at some point. He couldn't walk at the required minimum speed, so after 3 yellow card warnings, Ari was eliminated. Raymond and Peter both felt sad. They had seen far too many scenes like this along the way. After an unknown amount of time, their journey reached the terrifying 100-mile mark. Mike stepped forward again to encourage everyone. Someone wondered how he could still be so energetic, and another person replied unhappily that of course he was. He didn't have to walk. After dinner, he could go to sleep and even take a bath. as they were talking, a contestant suddenly tried to escape to a store, but was executed on the spot by the soldiers. Everyone felt a chill run through them. But the real tough battle was just beginning. After all, those who had lasted until now were all top-tier tough characters. For the next 3 miles, not a single gunshot rang out on the racetrack. Gradually, they passed through a town and reached a plain, and Peter took the initiative to start a conversation again. He asked what wishes everyone would make if they won the race. After all, as long as you asked, the organizers would grant it. Someone wanted a space rocket to go to the moon, while another wanted 10 beautiful women. One person said they wanted to lie flat at a massage parlor, and another talked about wanting a big meal. However, Raymond didn't join this topic. Even when Peter asked, he didn't reveal much. He only said his wish was related to the Great Race Walk. This statement triggered the frustration of the other young men. After experiencing it firsthand, they had realized the Great Race Walk was a killing game. It was nothing like what they had been taught, so for the first time, everyone felt a desire to resist. They raised their arms and shouted, "To hell with the Great Race Walk, to hell with the Major." After a few chants, the oppressive atmosphere finally eased a little. When the race reached the 130-mile mark, everyone ushered in their second night, but suddenly it started raining, and the downpour was so heavy that it made it impossible to open one's eyes. Raymond and Peter supported each other as they moved forward. When one got tired, the other would hold them up, taking turns to rest like this. By the time dawn broke, the team of 17 had dwindled to just 12 as they walked, but halfway, a black guy stopped walking. Raymond was startled, thinking he couldn't hold on anymore. But he only took off his pants to take care of his physical needs by the side of the road. The black guy timed it perfectly. When the warning countdown reached 9 seconds, he immediately stood up and moved forward. Peter told him to stay away from himself.
It's not your fault, you didn't have time to watch, but we shouldn't all be fucking paying for it, you know what I mean?
The black guy gave an awkward smile and had to hurry forward. After he walked away, Peter asked Raymond again what his wish was. Only after getting Peter's promise to keep it a secret did Raymond agree to speak. He said if he won, the first thing he would do was kill the referee, Mike. It turned out Raymond's father was an idealist who advocated for thought and freedom. But in this era of totalitarian rule in the United States, these beliefs became crimes. In the end, his father was arrested for spreading his ideas, and the leader of the law enforcement team was Mike, the current referee. In fact, if his father had just backed down a little, he would have been imprisoned for at most a few years and then released. But his father was stubborn. He even cursed out all his grievances in front of everyone. So Mike shot and killed Raymond's father on the spot. Now Raymond hated these unreasonable rules with all his heart. But he also knew he couldn't change this world alone. This wasn't just his own hatred, it was something their generation had to bear. But everyone had been worn down by life to be numb, only daring to swallow their resentment. He didn't want to be a hero to change the world. He just wanted to seek justice for his wrongfully killed father. As he spoke, Raymond told Peter his wish. If he won, he would wish for a soldier's rifle, then shoot the Major. Peter fell silent after hearing this. He wanted to say something to dissuade Raymond, but in the end, he held back his words. Then the race reached 170 kilometers. Some people began to can't hold on, and gunshots rang out again. Some even lost their minds. They took off their clothes and rushed off the road, only to be shot dead by a hail of bullets. In the blink of an eye, it was the third night of the race, and the distance had exceeded 200 miles. These people were so tired that their soles were covered in blisters. They supported each other as they walked, taking turns to catch their breath. But no matter how they took turns, their legs still felt as heavy as lead, unresponsive. Just then, Jimmy turned around and rushed towards the tank to grab a gun. The soldiers shot Jimmy a few times, but deliberately avoided vital areas. They wanted to use this to deter the other contestants, warning them not to think about resisting the race. Peter still tried to drag Jimmy forward, but he couldn't move him. It was only when Raymond ran over to pull Peter away that Peter wasn't shot dead along with Jimmy. The next day, Peter told the others that Jimmy had resisted because he wanted to go home alive. It turned out Jimmy was the only contestant among all who had a wife. Peter then proposed to everyone that whoever won the race should go back to see Jimmy's wife on his behalf. Everyone nodded in agreement. But just then, Vicky rushed out of the team like a madman and stood motionless by the roadside. Immediately after, a gunshot rang out, and Vicky fell into a pool of blood just like that. The oppressive atmosphere became even heavier. As time passed by minute, the race advanced to 260 miles. Peter couldn't believe it himself. He had actually made it this far. After another day and night passed, 5 survivors walked to the edge of the city. Just then, Raymond caught a glimpse of his mother by the roadside. In an instant, all his tiredness and fear turned into longing. He disregarded the race rules, lifted his feet and rushed over, telling his mother about his mistakes. but his mother told him not to stop. Fortunately, Peter pulled Raymond away at the critical moment, otherwise, Raymond would have been eliminated on the spot. Raymond told Peter, "You're right, I'm just as reckless as my father. We both only wanted to realize our own ideals, but forgot that this is a kind of harm to our loved ones." To cheer Raymond up, Peter told him the story behind the scar on his neck. Peter's parents died in the Civil War, so he had been an orphan since he was a child. Later, Peter was adopted by his alcoholic uncle, who had a bad temper and often beat and kicked him, but one day, his uncle died of alcohol poisoning at home. Peter was only 10 years old then. After that, Peter became homeless again and met many other children who, like him, had been abandoned by their families. They could only sleep in the wilderness, and when they were hungry, they picked up leftover food from others. Finally, they were taken in by the government, but life wasn't much better. At that time, Peter had a bad temper and liked to cause trouble. He stole when he had no money, and even deliberately made trouble to prove himself. Until one time, Peter offended someone he shouldn't have, and the scar on his neck was left from that incident. The other person left him there to die, but luckily, Peter was rescued and taken to the hospital. After that, Peter came to his senses. He swore that no matter how big the difficulties he encountered, he would strive to live on, because giving up is the real failure. Raymond looked at Peter and said, "You found hope to live, but I don't have that kind of courage." In fact, if it weren't for Peter, Raymond would have collapsed long ago. Peter admitted that he had nothing to lose, which was why he had to work hard to live. If he could get the reward, he wanted to help more abandoned children like himself. Peter said solemnly that he had always longed for a brother. He advised Raymond that if he could get out alive, he must cherish life, accept the reward, and return to his mother. With red eyes, Raymond thanked Peter for his help along the way. The race soon reached the 300-mile mark. Parker, the contestant walking at the front, suddenly strode towards the vehicle, grabbed a gun, and killed a soldier, but then he was killed by the other soldiers. The remaining 4 didn't dare to stop and could only keep moving forward. When they reached 324 miles, the black guy's nosebleed wouldn't stop. He knew he was suffering from internal bleeding and could no longer hold on, so he took off the necklace around his neck, stuffed it into Raymond's hand, and begged him to give it to his grandmother if he could get out alive. Raymond nodded, and just like that, another person was eliminated. When everyone reached 326 miles, Raymond learned that Jerry, the contestant who had persisted by his side until now, was one of Major Mike's many illegitimate children. Once, Jerry thought his father didn't even know he existed. Later, he found out that Mike actually knew, but he didn't care. Jerry's voice trembled as he said that his biggest wish was nothing more than being called home by his father for a cup of tea, but now he knew this wish would never come true. Jerry felt his body was collapsing.
They allow them when there's 2. The real diehards, the ones who will walk with you. The ones that want to see the Major do the final kill.
After saying these words, Jerry slowly came to a stop. Soon, 3 warning sounds rang out, and after a gunshot, Jerry fell to the ground. Now, only Raymond and Peter were left to keep walking. Raymond started talking about his childhood. Like most kids, he had no idea what death was back then. It wasn't until his father faced death head-on that he understood what fear was. He had even trembled all over with fear at that time. But now, with Peter by his side, he suddenly realized something. The most helpless thing in life is that everyone will die eventually, but luckily, he could still decide how to spend his remaining time. After saying this, Raymond was surprisingly calm. He even smiled a little. When they reached 331 kilometers, the cheers of a crowd came from ahead. Peter stared at Raymond for a long time, as if he wanted to engrave Raymond's face in his memory forever, but the next second, Peter suddenly dropped to one knee. Raymond hurried to tell him to get up, saying it wasn't over yet, but Peter told Raymond to keep going. Raymond tried his best to persuade Peter to go together, but when Peter stood up again, he didn't notice that Raymond had stopped walking. Peter tried to stop what was happening, but the soldiers roughly pulled him away. Immediately after, another gunshot rang out, and Raymond fell to the ground. Amid the crowd's cheers, the Major walked over with a fake smile, and announced that Peter had won. He also asked Peter what reward he wanted. Peter had empty eyes. As he listened to the absurd national anthem playing nearby, he said he wanted a carbine rifle. The Major thought he had misheard, but Peter repeated his request. As soon as he got the gun, Peter aimed it at the Major. The Major panicked and urged him to put down the gun, saying the whole world was waiting to hear his award speech. As long as Peter spoke up, all the glory and wealth he could want would be his. But Peter cried and said, "This shot is for Raymond." After saying that, he pulled the trigger. This shot tore off the country's false mask, and put an end to this cruel game that had been carried out in the name of faith. This is where the story ends. This film is adapted from Stephen King's novel of the same name, which he wrote when he was a freshman in college. At that time, He published his works under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. The novel wasn't officially published until 1979. The film tells the story of a totalitarian regime in a future dystopian United States, forcing 50 teenagers to participate in a Death March TV reality show. The film's settings are relatively simple. All the characters do is keep walking. The main plot is also conveyed to the audience through the characters' conversations. Although it has a setting similar to a battle royale, there is no internecine fighting here. Instead, the characters help each other, which is a very idealistic portrayal. However, one of the more questionable points is that, since they know they need to walk a long distance, most of the characters wear heavy boots instead of sports shoes. What's more, they don't carry high-calorie foods like candy to replenish their energy, which seems somewhat unreasonable. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe to it.